Welcome to the WTR Healthcare Happenings podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gerdeman, Vice Chair and Co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer of Water Tower Research. In today's podcast episode, I'm being joined by Rosen, Founder, Chairman, and CEO of Jupiter Neurosciences, Nasdaq, ticker symbol JUNS. Also joining is Robert Sassoon, WTR's Healthcare Analyst. Jupiter Neurosciences is a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company advancing a therapeutic pipeline targeting central nervous system or CNS disorders and neuroinflammation. So let me first start out by welcoming Krister and Robert to today's podcast. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Tim, and thanks for having us here. I'm excited to be able to answer some questions.
Awesome. So, Krister, can you begin by telling us your professional background, what brought you to establish Jupiter Neurosciences, and then perhaps provide a 30,000-foot overview of the company's business model to kick things off before Robert asks a few questions?
Okay, yeah, I'm Swedish originally, if you think I have a little accent. A computer scientist, went to University of Lund in the late 60s, early 70s, and that tells you my age approximately. Definitely entrepreneur, and started computer consulting company in Sweden, started hospitality events, the nightclubs, I owned hotels and restaurants, paid 82% in tax in Sweden, 81 and 82, my wife and I, and we decided to move to Florida. So there, we opened a restaurant and there as well, and I bought a Jeep Wrangler, couldn't hear the sound, so I invented a sound bar that is now standard equipment in all Jeep Wranglers since 1989. So I'm looking for when if I have a personal problem somewhere, or my mother had problems with osteoporosis, and that's how I then developed an effervescent execution of Fosamax, and that company actually I moved to Switzerland and was sold in about 2021 to Abiogen. I left the company in 2015, moved to Florida, and that's how Jupiter Neurosciences was created, because professors at University of Miami had worked on resveratrol as a drug for a rare disease. And they called me up and said that, Chris, you have been working on formulations and so on in the business, although I've never been a pharma guy originally, but I'm looking for a solution. They said, if we can make resveratrol highly bioavailable, which means that you get enough in the bloodstream to make a difference, like it's presented in all these scientific papers, and then we really have something. If you can't do it, forget about it. So that's how really the company was started.
Great. Well, thank you for that overview, and always fascinating to meet a serial entrepreneur across so many different industry sectors that you've played in. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Robert.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, and Krista, good to have you on this podcast. Let's start with the science. Can you walk us through your therapeutics platform, Jotrol, and the pipeline you're building on it?
Yeah, it's no one. It's kind of interesting. Here you have resveratrol, that is probably the most research molecule in the world, or one of them at least, about 25,000 scientific papers. It makes absolutely wonders in mice. Cardiovascular, CNS, diabetes, whatever. Resveratrol fixes that. There's a company called Certrus that was created in Boston years ago, and I think they went public 2009, oh no, 2006 or something. And then GSK bought them 2009 for 720 million. And Certrus have started by saying that resveratrol is a wonder drug, but they have created three NCEs that was supposed to mimic whatever resveratrol was doing. GSK bought them and later found out that these three NCEs didn't hold up in the promise and shut the whole thing down, which actually gave resveratrol kind of like a mixed reputation, or not so good reputation, which we suffered from when we started. It was very hard to get investors and so on. But we found a small company in Germany that had a very unique patented micellar delivery system. Micellar is nothing new, but they had really cracked the code how to make certain type of products work. And so we worked with them and then developed Jotrol together with them. And then we got a grant from NIA to do a phase 1 on eventually for targeting Alzheimer's disease. And in that study, we could see that we increased, which is widely published, the study, that we increased the bioavailability compared with regular resveratrol by 9 times. What does this mean? Well, there are a few studies done in humans, Alzheimer's patients and Friedreich's ataxia patients, that shows that if you can get to 250 nanograms per milliliter resveratrol in the bloodstream, you start to affect all the inflammation markers, mitochondrial markers, and you have a therapeutic effect. However, whenever you go over 2 grams of regular resveratrol, you start to get severe GI side effects. And to reach the levels that I mentioned in humans, you need to eat like 5 grams of the regular resveratrol. So we saw that with 500 milligrams of resveratrol in the Jotrol formulation, we had like 700 nanograms per milliliter of resveratrol in the bloodstream in our phase 1 study. So therefore, we're very comfortable that we can reach the therapeutic level needed. And then of course, the clinical trial, the phase 2 trial that we now are doing in Parkinson's patients, that's going to be proving, how good we are.
Right. So, as you mentioned, resveratrol has been studied for a long time, I think well over a decade. And so far, there hasn't been an approved drug. So, what does the formulation change that gives you belief and confidence that it's going to be a viable drug and more importantly, an approvable CNS therapeutic?
First of all, what was very good, which we expected, of course, is that safety profile is so good. When you can get the amount of resveratrol that you need in the bloodstream without having those severe GI side effects. And the GI side effect is really the only side effect. I dare to say we have one of the safest drugs in the world on the safety side. The trick is really that with the regular resveratrol, what happens when you do ingest it, it goes into the portal vein directly into the liver and metabolizes 99.6%. So you have hardly anything left that goes into the bloodstream. And the metabolites doesn't really do much of a job. With the Jotrol preparation, absorption actually goes through the intestines into your lymph system before it reaches the liver. And that's really, so in a way you can say we avoid the first pass effect, get enough into the bloodstream to really go to the therapeutic side. And so it's sounds simple, but we're the only one that's been able to do it. And we have patents to 2036 as well. So
right. Let's take that further. And the platform's only active clinical program currently is the phase 2A that you mentioned. It's a phase 2A study in Parkinson's disease. So can you tell us about the program's design and goals, update us on the progress the study is making, and what are the upcoming milestones we can expect to hear about in the coming months?
I think I turn that over to our Chief Operating Officer and President Alison Silva, that is really spearheading this program, and she has a long pharmaceutical background and so on, and
Sure.
really knows her stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to take this question. So as you mentioned, we just announced the activation and enrollment of our phase 2A reset program. And this is a multi-center, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial that's evaluating the primary endpoints of safety and tolerability as well as looking at the pharmacokinetics of the Jotrol product. Some other exploratory and secondary endpoints, which we're really excited about, are the biomarkers of energy metabolism, neuroinflammatory markers like TREM2, NLRP3, different interleukins, and then we'll be looking at the CSF profile of these patients at baseline and endpoint and looking to see the changes after 12 weeks on drug. So it is a daily oral dosing. It's nice that these patients can be, can receive drug to take home and take just a couple of capsules a day. So it's a low patient burden. All of the patients will have a stage of Parkinson's that's been pre-identified, and that is well known to the clinicians. There'll be a randomized 1:1:1, so a third will receive placebo, a third will be titrated up to 200 milligrams, and then the last group will go up to 400 milligrams. So as Chris mentioned, we know that those are therapeutic doses from prior PK work, so we're pretty confident that we'll get a healthy data set when we read out. There are 3 sites that are participating in the trial. The principal investigator is Fernando Pagan at Georgetown. So we have Georgetown University as well as 2 other MedStar Health sites. This trial was just made active on clinicaltrials.gov, so the entire protocol design is up there, and we hope to be dosing our first patient any day now, with readouts on the trial by early next year. So the first quarter of 2027, we really hope to be able to be updating our investor base on the endpoints associated with the trial.
Right. So, I mean, just taking that a little further, what specifically would you need to see from this readout to call it a success?
Yeah, so we're very confident with the safety and tolerability aspect. We again have tested that in a smaller phase 1. So that is our primary endpoint, but still we have to, that would be a success for us, is to get through the initial safety and tolerability work in a patient population. This is the first time that our drug product has been administered to patients and not normal healthy volunteers. We're really interested to look at the pharmacokinetics and see what that Cmax looks like. That would prove out our hypothesis regarding the ninefold bioavailability. So I think that would be transformative. And then really the exploratory endpoints, we think we'll have a lot of biomarker data that would just be kind of the icing on the cake here. If we could show that we had reduction in some inflammatory markers, as well as some symptom readouts. We are assessing a panel of patient-reported clinical outcome measures that are well known in the space, that are used for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's programs as validated endpoints with the FDA. Those are very exploratory and would be high level, but we did include them in the trial just so we could get used to working with those clinical outcome measures and potentially read out on symptom or disease impact. So there's a wide spectrum of things that we can expect in this trial, ranging everywhere from safety to reduced falls or quicker get up and go tests, better mobility in the patients, all of that. But that's to be determined once we get into this.
Well, thank you, Alison, for all that information. We'll certainly look forward to the time when you do actually have that readout.
Yeah.
So Krista, you've built this platform as a dual engine model with the therapeutics program on one side, and you have a direct-to-consumer longevity business and wellness brand on the other side, a sort of a line of premium nutritional supplements for which resveratrol is a key ingredient. Both running on Jotrol. What's the case for keeping those 2 models under one roof at this stage, and rather than running a focused clinical stage company and licensing the consumer rights to someone else?
It's a good question, but this whole thought of the longevity side came about a year ago, and we saw this whole longevity and aging sector is just exploding, and that is, everyone knows that's a big future. To remember that Jotrol was created by Jupiter Neurosciences, and therefore, and so all the existing shareholders, investors that we have, they have invested the money to generate Jotrol. And it would be, I mean, yes, there are some spin-off ways you can do use of those shareholders still is part of a new thing. But we said, let's keep it under Jupiter Neuroscience control, especially until we see, for example, the results of the Parkinson's trial. It might be of interest there are some big pharma now that is also getting into longevity that already is in Parkinson's. Maybe our value proposition will be even higher if we have some good Parkinson's results, if they want to in-license, our product and so on. So we said, let's not just rush into it, and see what we do, test the water, which we have done, especially in the first quarter of this year, which it's always the setup is quite expensive, and we allocated a lot of our salaries into that and so on. But now this quarter, we started to see the sales coming in, and we have a lot of collaborators now that we're working on to setting up and so on. So it's interesting.
Okay. You're talking about sales. So Nujivia product revenue was about 19,000 in the first quarter of this year. But that was against roughly around 470,000 of SG&A allocated to that segment. So can you describe the pathway for us to towards generating the positive cash flow from that business that you're targeting for 2027?
Yeah, I mean, I think we beat those sales numbers the last 2 weeks, where we are now. So, but we remember that's when this was where are we putting our salaries in the bucket, and I worked a lot on Nujivia in the first quarter and so on. Yes, so I allocated more of my salaries into it and so on, and Alison as well. While the second quarter, we have hardly worked at all on the Nujivia side. So we wanted to kind of reflect how we did things and so on. So I think that we need to. We don't. I mean, even at that, we have a very good margin on the product. So I think even when we are reaching like $500,000 sales in an annual year, we can break even, and then once you go up from there. But it's a very interesting market, and we love it. And we have a lot of subscribers that we get. They stay with us and so on. So I think that we can build on it, but it's not our core focus. I have to admit that.
But on the other hand, your own deck describes a strategy as keeping a high biotech exit on the Parkinson's program, while the consumer line generates cash by 2027. But you recently signed a term sheet to in-license ALA-002, an early-stage MDMA asset from Pharmala, which is a different molecule, a different modality outside of the Jotrol platform, and a third call on the same limited capital which your company currently has. What's the strategic thinking about behind that transaction, and how does adding a new clinical program square with a strategy built on focusing on the pipeline and exiting it?
No, exit. I mean, when you look back and listen to, if you think back of what Alison stated, if we show, and we already have, big pharma companies following us in the Parkinson's, and they want to see the Parkinson's phase 2 trial. What that leads to, we really don't know. We are kind of agnostic right now. We just said, let's see that we do this right, and then the data will tell the world how valuable it is. We believe that we have a strong opportunity to be the first disease-modifying product in Parkinson's disease. And if we can show that with the data, for example, on grip strength and the 6-minute walk test and so on, that is part of the program, we believe that there's someone out there that's going to want to have that product and pay dearly for it, and then we can out-license that. Which will then finance the whole Pharmala ALA-002 development, which we're actually very excited about. And Alison knows that business really, really well. And We think that can be a big winner for us.
Okay. So to close my questions, between the Parkinson's readout, the consumer ramp that you're expecting, and now ALA-002, you need capital to deliver on all of that. So walk us through the financing strategy from here, and specifically, what should investors expect on the capital side over the next 4 quarters and a year from now? And what's the one milestone you most want to be judged on?
I mean, if we take your last question first, the Parkinson's, readout, it will be in my estimation, and my belief is that that's going to be a huge win for us. And that, however that turns out, is going to be easily financing our operations for as long as we want to operate. So therefore, our strategy is to see that, yes, I mean, we have an S3, we have still an ELOC, and we will raise some money as we need, but we don't need very much more money, cash, to be able to go through the whole Parkinson's side, start up the IND work and so on the ALA-002, assuming that we will acquire that asset, quite shortly, actually. So yes, I mean, think about it this way. I'm the largest shareholder by far, and second and third shareholders are all co-founders. We've been able to, and we have done no financing with warrants. So we are concerned as well about, too heavy dilution. We want to see that which benefits all shareholders. We obviously have to see that we are financed, but we don't going to go out and just raise, $100 million because, we get all kinds of crazy offers. But, then especially when we have the huge upside of a Parkinson's readout, and then with a very low market value today.
Well, thanks for all of those answering all those questions, you and Krista and Alison, and helping to walk us through the Jupiter Neurosciences and help us get a better understanding of the company's business strategy and where you want to go. So best of luck to you all, and I'll just pass it back to Tim.
Thanks, Robert, for those great questions. And Krista and Alison, thanks so much for joining us today to discuss Jupiter Neurosciences, an exciting story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, as well as visiting www.watertowerresearch.com to stay up to speed on the company's small cap written research reports, podcasts, fireside chats, industry-specific symposiums, and conference schedules. We will see you next time for another edition of the WTR Healthcare Happenings podcast. Finally, a special thanks to the producer and editor of the podcast, Krista Fitzpatrick.